directly prove any of our theories, but it definitely hints at a lot of our speculations about what the truth may be. Specifically when we're talking about the creation of the universe, which has been something that we've been talking about for a long time on this channel. Where did the universe start? How did the universe start? Is the first ones really the first ones? Or were there others? How exactly does any of this work? Okay, so this is the foreword that we have right now. This is on the BTR. This is brand new stuff. I have no means to convey the tenure of my labor upon this quest, for how can time be measured in search of such a place? Surely the sepulchre of the first ones exists beyond any measure that one such as I could hope to comprehend, and I possess far more knowledge of these matters than most. Forgive me, their mockery has made me bitter. I must remind myself to ignore the petty envies of my lessers. First and foremost, the sepulchre of the first ones.
That's definitely one to give me a lore chub right there. That's got me going, whoa, whoa.
Yes.
However, for very different reasons than a lot of other people. And this actually comes from something that we've spoken about before, about who the first ones are. They've gone into mirrors. They've changed the narrative on us. Yeah. It's no longer six forces with things branching into it from outside. Those six forces are the branch itself. The Titans are the first ones. They are the makers of reality. Okay,
so I have a very different speculation theory than you, because I don't think the Titans are the first ones, but we're going to get into that. Let's keep reading. When we finally discovered a tangible clue to the location of that sacred place, after so many ages of speculation, I began my work with their full confidence. My gifts for deciphering the inscrutable had deservedly earned me an impeccable reputation. How many ancient codes had I broken? How many lost tongues had I translated? No secret was beyond my grasp. They all knew this and had reaped the profits of my genius. This is the brokers, by the way. This entire thing is from the perspective of a broker. And this makes the book that's coming soon, The Grimoire of the Shadowlands, so much more interesting. Because this gives us actually, and I do want to sort of just focus on this, this gives us a hell of a lot of insight into how the brokers came about their knowledge. They don't just guess things. So the Grimoire of the Shadowlands is probably going to be far more accurate than even that of the Chronicles. Because they don't just guess things. They don't just accept things as true. You can look at it here. They look for evidence, and based on the evidence, they decipher whatever runes they can find, and then they draw hypotheses, and then look for more evidence of those hypotheses.
To an extent, I agree with you there, but they're still limited in their knowledge. They still only know one plane of existence. So they're still going to make a lot of mistakes when extrapolating and assuming. Same as obviously all theory crafters that we would know nothing about.
yeah, true. Obviously, we all make mistakes because basically, and this is actually kind of cool, the brokers is very much like the speculation YouTubers, IRL. We look for small bits of evidence and then we draw hypotheses and make videos on it. They write journals. And yet here, so close to achieving our goals, I faltered. Yes, I admit, for the first time I faced a challenge so daunting that I doubted my ability to overcome it. Ilfirim, the fallible. They snickered in ill-concealed whispers. But who among them fared better? None. I assure you, the complexity of the glyphs alone was, well, let me say, it felt like an eternity passed before I grasped the first inkling of what they represented. Are we correct in saying that all of this is transpiring? He's writing this as he is looking at the runes of the sepulchre of the first ones.
Definitely think it's real time, right? This is his journal. This is his notes on the expedition.
Yeah.
So I don't think this is going to be like he got to the end and then went back to then rewrite everything out. I think this is definitely in real time as to what he's seen.
How do you decipher a language this old as a broker? Now, you're going to learn throughout these passages, by the way, as we continue going deeper and deeper into it. The brokers literally come from the in-between. And by the way, I want us to stop using the word Shadowlands. The Shadowlands is a portion of the world known as the in-between. They had zero knowledge of the world of mortals. Like zero. They knew nothing of the world of mortals until they were told about it. Actually, I have a theory about the Twisting Nether. Hold your thoughts, because things are going to get a lot more crazy up in this bitch. The others came and went. They brought in helpers and apprentices that claimed would aid me. None lasted. None proved worthy. They tried to tell me I should stop, that they had found another to take up the work, but I refused to leave. I knew who it was they planned to send, and I had vowed that she would never again usurp my position. This is Venari.
Definitely Venari. I mean, clearly the only option here is Venari.
This might also be why Venari at the moment is hiding.
Yeah,
she doesn't want anyone to know that she is in the mall. Because she is hiding from this fucking guy, whoever the hell he is. I was lost in the glyphs. The geometry, every path seemed to curve in upon itself. Nothing made sense until it did. When at last the realization, and this, he basically describes coming up with a new theory for a video. Like 100%.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like nothing makes sense. You're sort of going in circles, you're sort of thinking, and then suddenly a light goes on. It's like, all right, okay, fuck, this makes sense. Okay, I get it now. Okay, the theory fucking finally makes sense. When at last the realization struck me, I swear to you that reality itself seemed to melt away. I saw visions of the unimaginable, sights I could never hope to convey in mere words. When I became conscious of my surroundings again, I saw the others staring down, mocking my sprawled limbs. It didn't matter. I had found the truth at last. Now, this is actually something that I think is incredibly interesting, because what he's describing here is that these runes were talking to him. They were basically giving him visions. As soon as he made sense of it, the runes itself sort of planted visions of the start.
Well, we know something else that does that as well. I mean, Titans speak in exactly the same way.
To be fair, though, you could also say old gods do.
I mean, old gods do it very differently. They're going to tell you things, outright tell you things, but just those things are confusing as shit.
Yeah,
they don't usually speak to you in nothing but visions.
No, but they also give you visions. Yes, they whisper to you, but the whispers lead to visions. Visions of, you have these stories of people that's been sort of under the influence of the old gods, where they eventually couldn't sleep anymore because of the visions. It drove them completely crazy. All of the visions implanted by the old gods. So it does appear as if they're all sort of, both of them are employing something similar, if you will. What this actually reminds me far more of is, for those of you that played Mass Effect, the relics that you discover in Mass Effect that belongs to the Reapers, or at least that doesn't actually belong to the Reapers, it belongs to the Protheans. But as soon as you touch one of these relics, you get sort of flashes of a vision, something happening, some huge thing that you can't really piece together, but it is there. So just sort of interesting in how these runes speak, which might give us more insight into the future of how the first ones exactly came to be. Understand, despite this being the most wondrous revelation of my storied career, I stand upon the merest precipice of understanding. The language of the first one seems to shift and grow as I find greater depths within it. So it's a language that is alive. It's a language that literally shifts in front of you, telling you different stories. So the deeper you go, the more the story changes. I have no doubt that further meanings will reveal themselves as the glyphs and the geometry of this fractal tongue become more known to me. So please consider the chapters ahead to be but works in progress. It is not that there is a chance they will change. There is a certainty of it. Enough preamble. Read now the greatest discovery of our time. And before we jump into it, what are your thoughts?
I mean, right there is just Blizzard outright mocking themselves, being very satirical about retconning. Like, this is just the chapter. It's all a work in progress. Don't worry about it. It's gonna fucking change.
Just making sure that you can actually retcon shit.
I mean, it points to a lot of different things. It definitely does.
It's not too much. Okay, so it doesn't give us all the information about the first ones, but it does give us an inkling of what their world sort of looked like, what their culture was, because a language that advanced, this is beyond mortal comprehension. This is something that, and I mean, brokers are by all accounts more intelligent than we are, and if they're having these many issues trying to decipher this language, can you imagine our own issues trying to decipher this?
See, I don't think it's going to be that much of an issue. Okay, so brokers are very methodical, very scientific, very empirical.
Yeah.
They deal in as much fact as possible.
Yes.
Less emotional.
Yeah.
And yet mortals definitely work on emotion rather than fact more often than not. So if something's going to be speaking in emotion, we would actually have a much easier understanding than they would.
True. The dawn of all things. It is no small irony that the first specimens of their language remain the most inscrutable. That is what hindered my progress for so long. Regardless, the particulars are beyond my present ability to decipher. With time, I am certain I will succeed, but not yet. Alright, so he can't tell us exactly what the first moments of the universe looked like, which is frustrating as fuck, because this is actually, I want to know how the universe actually started, but, you know, it is what it is. There are references to forces so primal that we have no frame of reference for them. Roiling and churning, or measured and deliberate. The words here have multiple meanings. I must set them aside for now. So
now, that right there,
yeah,
that page is my favorite page, and it's the one that's caused so many people to lose their fucking marbles. The primal forces, right, is something that we've spoken about at great length as to what the first ones could possibly be. Now, I am firmly of the opinion that they are the Titans, and there's further evidence that we'll discuss later to back that up and the reason why I think that. But a while ago, I actually asked the Scribes of Discord to piece together some information for me. Very specific information, references to very specific things as to what the first ones could be. And the main one, hope. We've seen this reoccurring theme through a lot of expansions now about killing hope, harnessing hope, talking to hope, controlling hope. And if each force gave something to a creation that we now see as part of our reality, well, there's 6 forces, right? There's light, void, death, life, order, and disorder. And light is very specifically associated with hope. Those forces have a fundamental core concept, a primal instinct behind them all of hope, justice, fear, cowardice, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Let's continue reading, because this is actually not the most interesting part for me. What is clear is that great powers took shape. How many? There are numbers within numbers, my friends. At first I thought only 2, until I perceived an infinite array, the terror of it. But as of late, I have settled on 6. Possibly 7. But the last might be an artifact of the geometry, a fractal. I will tell you what I know. So he settles on 6 powers, but later on, and you will see when we get there, he does actually say that these powers are not static. From these powers, new powers sort of seem to develop itself. It's like a river. It continues to find new ways to flow and new ways to grow and new ways to move. These 6 forces existed in strife. Well, not strife in the way one such as you or I would see it. Opposition, surely, But whether malignant or benign is unclear. There was imbalance until there was a need for something more. They came together, or were brought together, depending on how one interprets the fractal, and gave form to their design. Forged, scribed, shaped, the exact word is elusive. Each architect gave a portion of themselves, and thus the pattern was drawn. It is from here that the language becomes clearer. Now, this was one of the most interesting passages to me.
Oh, definitely interesting. And we know a lot more than it says. And we're now able to actually speak about it because we've got the stuff that we can logically draw the conclusion from rather than just leaking the information. And I'm so happy that they've given this to us.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. The reason I found this so interesting, right, is it says here that in the beginning, these 6 forces were in strife, but not the way that we would know it. So when we're talking about strife, we would talk about war, we would talk about battle, combat against one another. But rather what he seems to think here is it was more imbalance. Now remember, Steve Denuser actually spoke about this. The different cosmological forces will oftentimes unite in order to knock one of the forces down whenever it gets too much power, because the whole point of the universe is to always remain within unity, within balance. Balance being the most important part. They did not see their universe, and this is true to this day. The old gods do not view the perfect universe the same way that the light does. While both understand the necessity for the other, at least the void understands that the light does have a purpose within the universe, right? They don't necessarily agree on what that purpose should be or where that universe should lead. Now, moving on, with a framework in place, all that we now comprehend came to be, as if reality were nothing more than a fungus growing upon a frame. 6 forces now in balance, and from their intersections arose others. A simple structure growing infinitely more complex. Now do you understand why my translations took such time? Why they still elude me? It grows, it changes, glyphs and geometry and fractals everywhere. Forgive me. The 6 forces now in balance. They came together, they were in balance, and what's interesting is what he says here, as if reality were nothing more than a fungus growing upon the frame.
I see Andy in chat as well. Fucking fungus, you say?
Yeah.
After our conversation about Marasmius last week, and about how he is the embodiment of the creation, taking the Tom Bombadil theory that he's the embodiment of Eru Iluvatar's song of creation.
Yeah.
From Lord of the Rings. Great idea, and actually very close to home. It was his body was used to create Ardenweald.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I love these pages. They open up so much more story, and it's fantastic. I do think that a lot of people have gone the wrong way with it, though. They're focusing too much on the spiral out rather than the spiral in. A lot of mirrors have been coming up in the story through BFA, through Shadowlands, and how there is an equal and opposite, which I think is now confirmed, right? To begin with, there was a singularity that split into an equal and opposite. You have a present and a not present in any spiral. Right, there's the part that is present, and then the gaps in between.
Yeah,
there's that void, so to speak. Okay. And the present part, the binary one, that is now splitting into what we see of the 6 forces, and then into everything else of the mixture of these forces. But there's obviously going to be an opposite and equal on the other side of it as well.
Yeah,
that is filling the gaps in between these spaces. And we know from the Broker book as well, the excerpt about the Pantheon of Life, that we have obviously speculated quite a lot on, about that being the Titans and the Pantheon of the realms of the living, not the Pantheon of the life force. So I think we're going to see the Eternal Ones being equal and opposite.
I just quickly want to double down here, or at least explain this, because a lot of people have sort of reached out to me in my last video. I said the Pantheon of Life being the Pantheon that we know as Order, and people said you probably meant the Pantheon of Order. No, I didn't. According to our own speculation right now, and this is based on the evidence that we've been able to collect, and sort of piece together. Whenever they speak about the Pantheon of Life, what they're actually talking about is the Pantheon of Order, because it's the Pantheon in life. So it's the Pantheon that allowed life to come into existence. If you think about everything that the Titans do, they order worlds. They allow life to come into existence. If you think about what is the opposite of the Shadowlands, where souls go once they've died, it would be the Pantheon of Order. The one that allows for habitats where these souls can be born so that they can die, so that they can enter into the Shadowlands. So the Pantheon
they even gain a soul in the first place.
Yeah, that is obviously up for debate as to how these souls actually came into being, but one might make the argument, and this is sort of what I just want to focus on before we continue with the pages here, they came together or were brought together. So that's an interesting distinction, because remember what we said earlier. He sees 6 forces, perhaps a 7th. The 7th may just be a fractal. So he may be wrong. The geography sort of throws him off. He's not entirely sure about the ruins, but it seems that 6, definitely. A 7th, perhaps. Now, for my speculation, that's important. I realize it's not going to be necessarily for Apocalypse, but for my speculation, the 7th is important to remember.
Well, for me, that's speaking about the overall, right? So the pattern itself is the 7th. The purpose is the 7th. If you I would have to have much better fucking paint skills than I actually have to be able to do this properly. But you have a singular point, and it's spiraling out, and then it's spiraling into others on its way around. And then where do they go? Do they then coalesce back into a 1, or are they being brought back into the center of the pattern to feed it again? And what would be at the center of the pattern is the only thing we know that has punched through every single dimension. That would be Azeroth in the Maelstrom.
All right, we'll get to what I believe and what you believe in a second. Now do you understand why my translations took such time, why they still elude me? It grows, it changes, glyphs and geometry and fractals everywhere. Forgive me. As each emptiness abated and grew fuller, the pattern alone was not enough. Shapes arose within shapes, begotten by the 6 to beget more. Now it grows clearer, more certain, each layer more fathomable to a meager mind such as yours. As the 6, begotten by the 6 to beget more. So they started to create their own realities, their own sort of creations within creations.
So that would be the Shadowlands, the Dream, etc., etc.
Yes, but it could also be the old gods. Would be a creation within a creation. If the Void Lords is the original creation, then the old gods would stand as a creation within said creation. I'm not saying it is, but saying it is interesting. Every single one of the Shadowlands realms would be a creation within a creation. Something that was created not by the first ones, but rather by the beings left behind by the first ones. 6 realms, many intersections, countless fractals, imbalance, possibly, but that might be wrong. If 6 equal 1, then what is the other? The one outside the pattern, and this, by the way, was for me the most interesting line in this entire fucking journal. Note, I must return to this chapter later to afford greater clarity. It is possible I possess a propensity to ramble.
Wouldn't know anything about that one.
6 realms, many intersections, in balance, possibly, but that might be wrong. If 6 equal 1, then what is the other? The one outside the pattern?
Well, this comes into one of the leaks that I've been waiting to talk about for a very long time. Very, very long time. And
I'm all ears.
Also kind of lends a little bit of credence to the in-between being the nether at the same time. But there is a Titan soul that is missing. Argus got used up to hold Sargeras. So Argus's soul gone, burned up, much like Varian. He got disenchanted. So we've got Azeroth. We know where she is.
Yep.
Pretty much. We got the rest of the Pantheon. We know where they are. There's one that got sliced up when it was a young'un. That died. That actually died a proper death. Where do Titans go when they die?
Well, we all sort of argued because of what Steve Denuso said that they would go to the Pantheon homelands, or the Titan homelands, if you will.
Exactly. And how would it get there? Well, it would have to travel through something, right?
Hey,
it would have
I just quickly want to say, Terran Gregory has just joined us. Terran, how you doing? Ladies and gentlemen, I give
the boy
you
himself,
the amazing, the immaculate Terran Gregory. Apocalypse, I do apologize for sort of interrupting you.
No, definitely well worth the interruption. Terran definitely deserves much more of the floor. And
Yes.
I'm just saying, Terran, if you want to take my spot on this show, I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with it too. I'm okay with it too. All right, go. Give us your thoughts.
So, where was I? Well, it would have to travel through something, right? It would have to go through the nether. Yeah, going through the twisting nether, essentially. Going through this trans-dimensional gap between the forces to get to its native resting spot. And if something could, I don't know, harpoon it, then maybe we actually do know where this Titan is as well. Maybe we go party on it in 9.1. Maybe it's actually where the home of these knowledge fiends actually is.
So you actually think that Korthia is the body of the Titan that was slashed in half by Sargeras?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a connection there, especially with certain items being found of, like Titan cores being found on Korthia. There's no way they should be there unless it had something to do with the Titan in the first place. So, I don't know, there's just too many things that line up for it not to be related at this point.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of insight into how my mind works around this. In balance, possibly, but that might be wrong. If 6 equal 1, then what is the other? The one outside the pattern. Now, from where I sit and from what I'm seeing, we have 2 beings that is described as old, as in very old. We have the first ones, which no one remembers them. They just are. They were responsible for a lot of things. According to this expedition journal, their sepulcher is somewhere. Now, is this where the first ones lie buried? Probably not. This might be a sepulcher that they used to bury something. Doesn't have to be their resting place. But then we
doesn't have to be their resting place at all.
But you see, then we have something else. Something that I genuinely want with all my fucking heart. The ever-living. I do not believe that the ever-living is related to the first ones. In fact, when he speaks about the one outside the pattern, you have the first ones and the ever-living, the 2 immortalist or most immortal beings of immortal beings, the beings that were there at the start of it all. Why is it that we see the statues of the ever-living, but not everywhere? They're not everywhere. They're on the Dark Portal. The Dark Portal, which was influenced by the Nathrezim. The Nathrezim, who was influenced by Sidonathrez. Sidonathrez, who was influenced by Zuval. Zuval wants to bring down the Shadowlands in service to whom? And looking for the Sepulcher.
those statues are also floating off Nagrand as well. So, I mean,
True.
It's not entirely unreasonable that they would think, oh, hey, these statues of our ancestors, we're going to put them on the portal that's going to save us, right?
Yeah, but now you have a statue looking exactly like those statues, whispering things, knowing things that they shouldn't know, according to the broker or the attendant that is there on Korthia. They can't even begin to know how old the statue is.
Another funny kind of coincidence for me, there's probably just a reused asset, but I don't know anymore for that one, is that in one of the sections of the Vol'jin scenario, where you're going to go find out who brought him back from the Shadowlands, you're attacked by spirits and poltergeists, basically, that are trying to recapture Vol'jin's soul. They're exactly the same as the statues. And I know quite a few content creators absolutely lost their fucking nut at the time over that similarity between them and the statues on the Dark Portal as well.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, what if they weren't just souls?
The thing is, we know that Blizzard likes reusing assets. It's a cheap trick to bring new things, right? And if anyone has a problem with that, I would just say, if you want to wait 2 years between patches, then yes, Blizzard could make every single thing from fucking scratch to ensure that nothing looks like anything else. But in this regard,
quickly think up a new color.
Think about the amount of effort that Blizzard puts into Whispers. Whispers are very important to Blizzard, as they have shown now throughout the entirety of Legion and the entirety of BFA. Whispers, as we've already discussed, the Whispers of the Old Gods has fuck all to do with us. It is whispers to the Shadowlands. These things are yet to come true. The Old Gods are probably not even speaking to us in these whispers. They're talking to beings far more powerful than us. We simply listen in on the conversations. So I believe that this statue, looking exactly like the statues of the portals, of the Dark Portal, I think this statue is a hearken to something else. More importantly, and the reason I believe that you have these two immortal beings, one called the First Ones, the other being the Ever-Living, is because of who does Zuvul serve? One could obviously make the argument that he could be gripped by fear, the same way Sargeras was, but the only reason Sargeras was capable or able of being gripped by fear was because of the influence of the Jailer on him. Right? The Jailer knew what his biggest weakness would be, and the Jailer exploited said weakness. As far as I'm concerned, when you look at the story in its entirety, Zuvul wouldn't turn against these brothers unless there was also a force impacting him. Because what would be the point? If you are already as powerful as you are, as an Eternal One, what would be the point of turning against your brothers and sisters?
It's, again, the age-old story. I mean, they go into it in those passages as well, is that they're always kind of competing against each other. Maybe not necessarily all-out war, but if they all want the same thing, but there's not enough to share, then they're going to keep battling to try and take the bigger portion, right?
Yeah.
And everything, or each force seems to run on anima of some variation of name.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it could just be that they're trying to compete to get the most energy because that's what they do. They are split, so they act independently, but they're all aiming at the same thing.
My personal opinion is there are two infinite beings, the First Ones and the Ever-Living. These, as far as I'm concerned, is the two most fundamental original creatures within the universe. The one that was excluded, the one that was left out of the pattern, by the one that basically brought together the six forces and forced the six forces to basically become one. Because they're actually talking about this, and this is actually something that's very interesting. The six equal one. In other words, these six forces, we need to change our entire belief system of looking at the cosmological universe. We can't look at the cosmological universe as we used to, looking at it as these six forces are sort of in combat with one another, because they're actually one. So it's far closer to Christianity, right? Where you have the Holy Trinity, where yes, you have God, you have Jesus, you have the Holy Spirit, but God, Jesus, and Holy Spirit isn't three different entities. They are the same entity, just different sides of that exact same coin. So God, Jesus and the Holy Spirit, it's different personalities of God. So different elements of his personality that makes up the Holy Trinity. The six forces.
Aspects,
yeah. The six forces is very similar to that. It is different aspects of a singular being or a singular entity or a singular power. But they are not separate from one another, at least according to this. The six equal one.
Well, it's actually something I showed you a long time ago as well. The kind of zoomed out version of our understanding from the Chronicles map. Everyone's favorite map time. It was, which way does it go out? And how does it zoom out? And I'll just quickly re-DM that to you now so that you've got that straight away. But like, is it just an extra ring that goes out and there's bigger things than our understanding currently? Yeah. Or is it that each of our versions of reality, like our map, is just one portion of the ring? It kind of goes back into that fractal kind of imagery again as well, with it spiraling out from the middle into these new Chronicles maps that we have that form up a ring as it goes round.
I don't necessarily know if I have any sort of retort to that. So instead...
That's been Chaos's problem for the last 4 years. Like, I keep coming up with these ideas and he's like, I hate it, it shouldn't work, but I can't disprove it. And he gets fucking mad about it. It's amazing.
I don't hate it, and I don't want to disprove it because I agree with it. It's what happens after that you and I diverge somewhat and we go sort of in our own direction with it, much like the Everliving and the first ones, where you have your theory, my theory sort of... Because I've been obsessed, just to be very clear with everyone, my obsession for the last, shall we say, 2 years has been the origins of the World of Warcraft universe. I've been obsessed with it. And I realized that that's never going to make a good story for the game, right? Blizzard is never going to take us to an expansion that tells the origin of the fucking universe. Because what's the point, right? No one wants to see that except for lore nerds like myself.
I fucking want to see it, yeah.
That's all I want to see, right? So,
like, there we go, Terran. Like, if you just want to do, like, in-between patches, a small cinematic, unrelated to the patch whatsoever, just prehistory stuff, we're fine with it. We really are.
100%. Also, while you're at it, if you could tell Ian, I would love to go see the Black Empire again. That'd be great. I mean, proper Black Empire, I would be down for that shit. The known. Before delving deeper into the great mysteries, it is worth framing their wonder within the context of our own existence. What we know of it, at least. It fills me with sorrow that of the many beings I encountered on my travels through the Nimbus. Through the Nimbus, is that what they call the Great Beyond, or do you think it's simply traveling?
So I don't think that the brokers themselves are getting out of the Shadowlands dimension, so to speak. I think they are definitely stuck within that realm. So the Nimbus for me would probably be just another term for Oribos, with the kind of collection of zone travel.
The brokers are not bound by the Shadowlands. They arrived in the Shadowlands after the Arbiter went down in great numbers. They did not. They're not home to the Shadowlands. The Shadowlands is not their home. They happened upon the Shadowlands through their travels of what he refers to as the Nimbus. I'm not entirely sure if Nimbus has... What's the meaning of Nimbus? This is where I wish I was a fucking first language
Nimbus
English
is
speaker.
like a cloud.
All right, so... It could then be, because the in-between is very much like a cloud. It's everywhere. Well, it's basically as big as the Great Beyond, if not bigger.
The other definition that you may be interested in, though, is a ring of radiant light or glory. That sounds like something we know.
Indeed. Okay, let's not go too deep into that, but it definitely sounds like something that we have seen before. Beings I encountered on my travels through the Nimbus, so few possessed any interest beyond their sense of duty. I sought out scholars, philosophers, explorers. I found only simpletons and servitors. This journey took ages, and many times along the way felt fruitless. If only I had known of the existence of the Sepulcher. But of course, I would not learn of its wonders until much later, and so I plodded along the only way I could. Again, giving us some insights into how the brokers function. They really just care about information. That's their only job, their only goal. They don't seem to have goals beyond information. They collect it. It's their thing. I came close to finding wisdom on occasion. Joining a trade expedition to the Bastion, I met an amenable aspirant who told me of a great archive of knowledge, countless records of souls the Kyrians carried across from the mortal realm, as well as collections of their own long-shed memories. Now, what is very interesting to me is we knew that they held the memories of the ones that they basically purged inside these records, but it seems as if they also record the memories of the souls that they ferry.
It does seem a bit strange, though, that would be the case, considering Revendreth's kind of purpose as well, right? Like, you're meant to be atoning for these memories, so if they're just recording them and then like half of them are just getting shafted, like you don't get your memories no more, and the other is no, you're going to continuously relive these memories, that kind of doesn't just make sense to me.
Another thing that's very interesting, as well as collections of their own long-shed memories. Remember, we spoke about memory quite heavily, and how the loss of memory seems to be a fundamental pillar within this expansion. Like, it's definitely something that's, how do we put it? It's something that's focused on. Memory is important, and it does appear as if no one actually has their own fucking memories, or at least that memory was removed. There was a point at which everyone's memory was removed and sort of wiped in order to ensure that no one could remember prior to that point. So anything that happened before that point was just not remembered. Now, one could argue, well, that's when they came into being. But I think it's more sinister than that. I just want to throw that out. The aspirant was even willing to bring me to this repository until a nosy steward alerted one of the Ascendant. My expedition was escorted back to the Anima Gate, warned never to return. The fucking Kyrians, man. You cannot trust the Kyrians. Like, they are just not trustworthy. Some ages later, I secured an invitation to a tournament in the arena of Maldraxxus. While my companions reveled in the sport, I made my way to an ancient library nestled between the great houses. They called it Sepulcher, but I assure you, it was not the one we seek. So for those of you that sort of went, the Sepulcher, obviously it's that one. It's not that one. The one that we've all been to in the Shadowlands.
Thank you for confirming this, Blizzard.
That's not the Sepulcher that we were looking for. This is a different Sepulcher. We've already been at this one, and it does not house the secrets of the universe. The horrors I encountered on my journey there still haunt me to this day, but so fixed was I upon my goal that I braved nightmarish constructs and revolutes of toxic plague. When I arrived, the Liches agreed to tolerate my presence for a time, so I sought out their most ancient text for any history I could glean. Oh, I found histories of great battles fought against the outer planes.
So there's two ways that could be taken, right? The outer planes being outer of his current place, the outer of the Shadowlands. So when the light invaded, the void invaded, the Titans came in to restore the purpose or install the purpose, etc., which is the most obvious choice.
Yes.
But the other one that I've seen a lot of people get absolutely hung up on is the outer planes. Obviously, is the H.P. Lovecraft connection, the ancient eternal void, and the unspeakable horrors that will make you turn into a weeby ooh-wooing hentai obsessed person. But I don't know. I think with, again, the kind of correlation of mirrors again and flip sides and equal and opposites, this would be mostly our realms, right? The light, the void, etc., jumping into the Shadowlands.
When I asked if there were any older tomes, the implacable liches told me those were for the eyes of the Primus alone, and I was commanded to leave at once. It was not until I arrived in Oribos that I at last found others who shared my curiosity. Among the Arbiter's attendants was a knowledgeable sort named Kashir, who had seen many ages pass through the course of his duties. Though he was blindly obeisant to his mistress as the rest of his kind, I admit that, standing within the grandeur of the fabled Eternal City, I could understand his devotion. Kashir enjoyed conversing with me, sharing all that he had seen and knowledge that he had been passed down by his predecessors. Alright, so I've made it clear from long ago that I do not agree with the blind devotion that is shown to the Arbiter. More importantly, I have a speculation theory that I will just very quickly share the sort of broad strokes with you. I'm not going to get into too much detail because I'm still working out the kinks of this theory, but the Arbiter was created by whoever subjugated the Shadowlands to exclude Zuval from the Pantheon of Death and to ensure that order will remain within the Shadowlands. This is the job of the Arbiter. So the Arbiter, while not an eternal one, is a sort of honorary eternal one because she is the one that creates the order, that ensures that no one gets too much power over the other. And through this, they were able to replace Zuval, who I still believe was actually the original leader of the Shadowlands. He was the original Amanthul, if you will, of the pantheon of the Eternal Ones. This is one of the reasons he believes that he was wronged. Yet within all his words, and in the ritual of service he allowed me to observe, I found little of true value. The city had stood forever, he said. The Arbiter was ever wise and just, he said. Ours was not to question those from beyond the veil, but to facilitate their journeys, he said. It was when Kashir let slip that he had shared similar conversations with an old rival of mine. I vowed she would never thwart me again, that I knew this was a pointless course. I left Kashir to his blathering. Alright, so he clearly hates Venari for whatever fucking reason.
100%, yeah.
Clearly despises Venari. And I'm sure if you asked Venari, she would hate him too. So yes, this is actually something that is rather interesting to me. The problem just with his argument here, yet within all his words and in the rituals of service he allowed me to observe, I found little of true value. The city has stood forever, he said. The Arbiter was ever wise and just, and he said, ours was not to question those from beyond the veil, but to facilitate their journeys, he said. That's not true. If they're not to question, then what the fuck does the Arbiter do? Does she not question literally every single person from beyond the veil, judging them based on their own acts? Because if all she was doing was to facilitate in their journeys, then choice would then it would be like the sorting hat in Harry Potter, right? Where the sorting hat will tell you Slytherin, but you can say, no, I want to be a dickhead from another fucking house, right?
Well, there is a difference between judging and assigning and questioning. Like, I judge you for being a weeb. I'm not questioning it. I know how this happened. I don't need to question how you got there. I judge you to fuck for it, but I'm not questioning you on it. So there is a difference between judging and questioning.
But I am not a weeb, though.
You are. You just need to admit it at this point.
Bro, playing Final Fantasy is not the same as being a fucking weeb. I have never read a single manga in my life. I've never watched anime. I wouldn't fucking watch anime.
It's all downhill from here, dude. You're gonna be ooh-wooing all over the place soon, though.
I would never use the words unironically ooh in my life. Like, fucking never. But there is actually some really, really interesting things coming now in part 3. The 100 Eyes of Eric II. It was upon storming out of the attendant's presence that I stumbled upon a true find. There, passing through Oribos, on their way to another destination, I encountered a transcendent soul. They held a form I did not recognize, for they resumed a shape resembling the one they held in the mortal plane. I begged them to speak with me, and they agreed. They said their name was Eric II, and though I asked thrice where they had come from, the name of their home was one I could barely understand, let alone repeat or inscribe. It appeared Eric II spoke with 4 tongues, and in concert with the clicking of their many legs, I did at times have trouble catching every detail. Eric II claimed the place beyond the veil was populated by countless worlds, many inhabited by all manner of beings very different from their own people. When I asked if this world of theirs was rich with anima, Eric II assumed an expression I took to be puzzlement, though the 100 Eyes of Eric II were admittedly difficult to read. The living did not trade in anima, they said, a phrase I asked them to repeat several times to be certain I heard it correctly. No anima? How? Could their existence truly be so different from our own? This shoots every theory we've ever had about the brokers being the original ethereals down. 100%. We were wrong.
And this is why I was saying earlier that it's plainly obvious that at least this broker is stuck within the Shadowlands. He hasn't left yet because he didn't know about these worlds that don't use anima. Yeah. Right? He hasn't been to the planes of the living. So his Nimbus that he speaks about earlier is definitely not the Twisting Nether, the Great Dark Beyond, or anything in our version of reality.
I would argue none of them have, but I will explain myself in a bit. Like, I'll explain why.
It does sound like a Cathraxi, though, I'm not gonna lie. Like, the fucking mop bugs.
First of all, they didn't have 100 eyes.
The original ones did. It was...
The very big ones, yes. How could Azeroth be impossible to fucking pronounce?
Well, they didn't come from Azeroth, did they? They came from the old gods.
Yeah, they were created by the old gods, but you can't... Are you arguing, in other words, that the Cluxi, actually, the Mantid or the Cluxi, whichever one you want to look at, are you arguing that they actually came from a different world and was brought to Azeroth by the old gods?
Well, yeah, that's what they are, right? They're forms or life forms that have come from the flesh of the old god. And But that would still make them. But remember, that would still make them native to Azeroth. That would not suddenly give them a different world. It depends on when their memory begins. If they remember being part of the whole, because they certainly remember the Void and the Void's plans, right? They talk about it enough.
Yeah.
But if they remember being part of the original that was launched from the outside into our reality, they wouldn't be native to our planet at all.
Yeah, but then they would also not talk about their planet as being in the realm of the living or in the realm of reality, because their original home planet would not have been part of our reality.
Unless it is, and it's just locked behind a veil.
Yeah, but that's still...
Much like the Shadowlands,
that's
much
exactly,
like the Emerald Dream.
Let's just keep going, because there is actually more to this story. There is actually a bigger reason why I think things have changed entirely. It was indeed, Eric II assured me. They told me of this realm of mortals where their anima-less existence ceased with the terminus of their fragile forms. Eric II met their end in a terrible war, they claimed, their home ravaged by the demons of the Twisting Nether. I nodded in solemn camaraderie, for we all recall the tale of the Burning Legion's assault on Maldraxxus and the terrible cost of the Necrolord's victory. Now, we did know about the Void's attack on Maldraxxus. We also know from the cinematic that the Maldraxxus did have the Burning Legion in its sights, so it was spying on the Burning Legion, absolutely. But an attack by the Burning Legion on Maldraxxus, that's new.
Actually not. We did know about this.
Where?
Through an item called Fell Trigger that is found in Maldraxxus. It activates dormant Legion portals as its quest text, and it's a quest item. So we did actually know that the Burning Legion has been present in Maldraxxus for quite some time, since 9.0.1.
I never got that item, so it's actually quite interesting. Wait, when's this item going to be available? In 9.1 only?
It was 9.0.1.
All right.
It was provided as an objective for first to market before they then changed how that quest works.
All right. Okay. I didn't know that, so good catch there. But here's where my theory comes in. The Shadowlands is not the Shadowlands. The Shadowlands is simply a place that exists within the in-between. The in-between is home to death, to life, to light, to void, to the Burning Legion. They all call the in-between home. They are the 6 powers that exist outside of reality. As they were all brought together to create reality, the balance is kept by the veil that separates them from reality, so that none of them have direct influence on reality. The reason I say this is, if we were to argue that each one of them exists in their own bubble, what you would be talking about is, think about piercing the veil between reality and the Shadowlands. It required an artifact of immeasurable power to pierce that veil. An artifact literally bursting with anima, shattered in order to shatter that veil. Now, if that veil exists on that strength, why? To ensure that we can't interfere with them? Or more like to ensure that they can't really interfere with us?
I mean, we could definitely fuck with it. We've done plenty to fuck with the Shadowlands and the flow of souls into it, etc., etc. We are a bigger cosmological threat than the quest text would have us believe, with champion.
Yeah, but
the wounds.
To be fair, we would also find it very difficult to actually get there. Again, the only way for us to have gotten there was because of an artifact that comes from it, right? They had to give the artifact. Well, there could be other ways. Of course, there could be. Some of them require a fatal death in order to get there. There might be other ways to also get there. But at the end of the day, I believe that these beings or these realms all exist in the in-between. This is why you only have 2 pantheons in each. You have the one pantheon, the pantheon of the Eternals, who used to be the balancing act for the whole of the in-between, and the one in reality that is the balancing act for reality. Until whoever, I believe the first ones, might have been someone else, came and sort of changed the way the Eternal Ones work. To where we are now, where the Eternal Ones basically don't fucking do anything. All they do, I mean, literally, the brokers actually make reference of this. When you stand in Oribos for long enough and you listen to the broker speak, the brokers actually make reference of this. Should we tell the Archon and the Winter Queen about what we found? No, they don't really care. They only care about souls. They're so fucking stupid. They wouldn't even know what to do with this information. Let them be. Even the brokers have no respect for the Eternal Ones because they have, like the Titans, these one-track-minded sort of goals.
Purposes.
Right? Yeah, well, the purpose, I believe, is their prison. The purpose sort of pushes them back and forth, depending on, right? Eric too brightened when they recalled the Arbiter's kindness in sending them along the streams to a hive where others of their kind shared a long and pleasant coexistence. Here we get the first, what I would consider to be the injustice of the Shadowlands. The Arbiter does not judge you based on the life that you've led, based on your good or your evil deeds. She judges you based on, are you useful or are you not? If you are not useful, you get sent to a pleasant afterlife with the rest of your kind. However, if you are deemed useful, you are inducted into a lifetime of servitude, where if you're very unlucky, all your memories get taken from you and you basically turn into a fucking zombie that follows the Archon's every single word. If you're sort of unlucky, you get sent to Revendreth, where you become a battery for the Shadowlands.
Yeah.
Right? You become their battery, very solar powered, very green, but you still get fucked at the end of the day. If you're, well, not unlucky or, or lucky, you get sent to Ardenweald, where you get turned into a little fairy that basically thinks the Winter Queen is an absolute god and nothing can be wrong.
Arguably, Ardenweald is actually the fucking worst, dude. Like, not only are you kind of stuck dealing with just absolute fucking assholes there, these fairies playing pranks on you for the rest of eternity.
Yeah.
But should any of the other covenants require a permanent battery, they don't actually go to Revendreth for one. We actually see it in the Kyrian campaign.
Yeah,
you just get turned into a battery for a fucking throne.
Yeah, but remember...
Okay, cool.
But just to be fair, those are the beings that will be reborn and sent back to reality. So those are not necessarily the servants of Ardenweald. Although there's very few beings that is sent to Ardenweald to become servants, which is also a very interesting sort of concept. Yeah. We don't get many beings that sent there that will remain there for all eternity. And then, to my mind, if you're the luckiest... Now, I do use the word luckiest... sparingly here, and also
right.
what I'm not talking about is that blowjob you received when you were a teenager after a football match. That's not the kind of lucky I'm talking about. I'm talking about the kind of lucky where you weren't kicked in the balls while you were playing football on that day. You were sent to Maldraxxus, because at least in Maldraxxus you keep your mind. Yes, you are forced to fight and you are forced to basically just fucking follow the orders of the Primus, but at least you keep your mind. At least you keep who you were. And it seems like the people that is sent there to basically be who they were in life.
Yeah.
So you are effectively, in the Shadowlands, judged on your usefulness. If there's anything that the Shadowlands can get out of you, good luck. You are now serving for all eternity.
It's something that we spoke about as soon as we saw the first picture of Oribos, right, with the soul stream going through, is that you're either judged useful or you're cast out.
Yes.
And what is deemed useful? Like, I mean, you could have a soul like, I don't know, Duratan, that would be very useful for providing anima.
Yeah.
But is it the right kind of anima? Is it tainted by something, and that's why you get shafted and thrown out somewhere else? So yeah, this is definitely kind of confirmation of stuff we've been speaking about ever since Shadowlands was announced.
Yes. Now, I'm not entirely certain if this is Blizzard's intent, if they made the Covenants as unlikable as humanly possible, and by that I don't mean from a gameplay perspective, I'm talking from a story perspective. Anyone that's been following me for any amount of time will know that I have no trust nor any love for any of the Covenants. As someone that values personal freedom and liberty, I cannot imagine a worse fate than ever joining any of these fucking cults, and I would probably have been the former of the Forsworn. If I was saying to Bastion, I would be forming the Forsworn.
Let me join Zovar. Let me burn it all down. That's what we want to do.
Exactly. That's literally what I want to fucking do. After many ages caring for their kin, Erectu was ready to venture on, returning to Oribos to marvel at its splendor. Of course, I asked Erectu what they knew of the origins of the realm of mortals, but what they told me made little sense. Does every mortal believe a different tale of fancy? I nodded as they spoke, of their thousand-legged god whose eggs brought forth all existence, but soon I grew tired of their quaint fables and bid Erectu good journeys. So it seemed even the halls of Oribos could not grant me the truths I sought. Mortal souls believed in a myriad of myths that spoke of false gods, while we basked in the splendor of beings of true might. We were blessed to be in the presence of the Arbiter, the Archon, the Winter Queen, the Sire, and the Primus, until I found a deeper truth on my way to the Sepulcher, and my mind splintered at the fractals. Focus on what he's saying here. He says, we were blessed to be in the presence of the Arbiter, the Archon, the Winter Queen, the Sire, and the Primus, until I found a deeper truth on my way to the Sepulcher. In other words, I changed my mind. Being in their presence was not a blessing. Or, and I would be remiss if I did not focus on this, if I did not say this, or I found even more blessings on my way to the Sepulcher. In other words, I thought that was the biggest blessing one could have, but on my way to the Sepulcher, those paled in comparison. Which one do you believe? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching this clip from the Sunday Night Chill Show. The Sunday Night Chill Show, of course, every Sunday night right here on YouTube, where you can find literally all the lore that you can imagine, all the lore that you can stomach in a single evening. It's a lot of fun. You should definitely come check it out. Of course, to all of the patrons, the Twitch subs, and the YouTube channel members, thanks to you, this channel keeps growing. We literally wouldn't be here without you, so I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Guys, as always, my name is Akulon, and I will see all of you in the next one. Peace out, fam.